You should have open your astronomy concept term sheet. You can either find that in your Google Classroom or you can find it in your Google Drive. So we should be scrolling down to the section, What Does the Moon Look Like Tonight? To the Galaxy and Beyond concept term sheet. So some of you probably already know this, but I always thought that there were special rocks on the moon that made it glow, so to speak, glow-in-the-dark rocks. However, it's actually not glow-in-the-dark rocks, unfortunately. It's called moonlight, which is actually the reflective light from the sun that bounces back between us and the moon in the earth. It's almost like having a mirror between the earth and the sun that allows us to see the reflected light from the sun bouncing back to us. So it is all based on the sun, the largest star currently in our solar system. I always say currently because we always know that things can change and new discoveries can be found, especially with NASA and some private companies that continue to explore space. So we always see the same side of the moon. There's the lit side and the dark side. The Apollo missions have all been to the dark side of the moon. It's about 3 minutes, give or take, around the dark side of the moon where there is no transmit between the vehicle itself and NASA. This all happened during the Apollo missions because of the large mass of the moon. But we do always see the same side of the moon. Why? Because the rotation of the Earth is pretty much, as you can see, about the same speed as the rotation of the moon. So as we rotate to make 24 hours in a day, the moon rotates pretty much at the same exact speed. So that is why we always see the same side of the moon. So let's talk about the phases of the moon. I'm sure you've probably seen that there are different phases of the moon. Maybe some of you know the different phases of the moon. It is a cycle that completes in 28 days. That is what makes up at least a calendar month. In all calendar months, there are at least 28 days. There are definitely more days within calendar months to make up the 365 days of a year. All right, so let's start with this one. This is the first one that you will be typing. This is what we call new moon. New moon is described as the sunlit side faces away from the earth, which basically means that you can see the outline of the moon, but there is no reflective sun on the moon bouncing back to us. So what is allowing this to happen with no reflective light is basically the moon is between the earth and the sun, and basically because somewhat of a similar shape, not necessarily size, we have that blockage of the reflective light because the moon is in between the sun and the earth. So kind of that middle person, or the monkey in the middle, so to speak. So this is the new moon. Now, we continue to allow light to transfer. We allow light to transfer from east to west. This is the most iconic moon out there. You probably have seen it in a lot of picture books. It's also an icon for one movie company, DreamWorks. And this is called waxing crescent. So waxing crescent means that a portion of the moon, you can see, we should be typing this, eastern edge, that's why I put the rose compass coordinates on here, of the moon is lit. So basically we have reflected light that's going to transfer from east to west. And you will see that crescent moon going from new moon to crescent. Of course, we have more and more light transferring from east to west, and our next phase of the moon is first quarter, or some of you may know this as a half moon. I do caution you about half moons because there are two different types of half moons. Scientifically, we say first quarter. The eastern side of the moon is lit. The west side, as you can see, is completely dark. So it's half and half. East side, because we're transferring light from east to west. So the east is all lit, the west is not. And basically from new moon to first quarter to this moon, going into waxing crescent, it takes 7 days. So you ever wonder why we have 7 days within a calendar and a week? That's how we got it. So this is first quarter. So we still need more reflective light on the moon, so we're going to continue going from east to west. And our next moon is called waxing gibbous. This is kind of an odd-shaped moon, especially with the picture that I took here. Basically, you'll see that we went from half or first quarter, and more light is transferring to the western edge of the moon. So more light starts moving into the western areas of the moon. It may look like it is a full moon, but likely probably not. So this is waxing gibbous. So we went from first quarter to waxing gibbous, more light cruising to the western edge or the left side of the moon. And finally, the most iconic moon out there that most of you have seen is, of course, the full moon. We should be typing this. Entire sunlit side faces the earth. Earth is between the moon and the sun. So instead of the moon at new moon being the middleman, now the earth is in between the moon and the sun, which allows all of the reflective light to be shown on the moon. So the time phase, once again, from we were at first quarter, because that was the end of 7 days, from waxing gibbous up to full moon is another 7 days. So now we have 2 weeks or 14 days. Now, the next phases of the moon, we start to lose light. So we're at our peak right now, and we're going to start to lose light. And we're going to start to lose light from east to west again as it transfers back to new moon. The next one is called waning. I always remember that waning is like whining. It's after the full moon. I'm waning or whining because we're going to lose reflective light. We're losing reflective light, waning, and this is called gibbous, waning gibbous. So the eastern part of the moon, as you can see, now we're not increasing light, we're starting to lose light. So we obviously, for waxing, increased east to west. For waning, we're sad because the light is not visible. So you'll notice for this, the eastern part of the moon decreases in light. Waning gibbous sometimes at the beginning may still look like a full moon, but it probably is a waning gibbous. Usually full moons are only one, in a sense, day or about 24-hour period. So this is waning gibbous. So now, of course, we're kind of here. You know that we're going to have another half moon. But now instead of half moon, not very logical to say because there's 2 half moons, we call the next moon, you may have seen it before or heard of it, third quarter or the last quarter. So now instead of the eastern side being lit as it was in first quarter, now you can see the eastern side is completely dark because we're transferring no light. And now just the western side of the moon is completely lit. So let's do a time period check. So from full moon to waning gibbous, because we're waning, we're upset, we're losing light, to third quarter, last quarter, or half moon, we have 7 days. So now we are up to 21 days or 3 weeks. Now, of course, we're going to lose more and more light as we start transferring the reduction of light from east to west. And our next phase is what we call waning crescent. waning crescent. This is a small sliver of the moon, just like waxing crescent that we began with after new moon. But now you can see that the western edge of the moon is lit because we're reducing light from east to west. We should be typing this. And last but not least, how do we end? Well, of course, we're going to go back to new moon. You don't need to type this. So from last quarter, third quarter, from waning crescent all the way to new moon again, the cycle starts. We have 28 days or 4 weeks, which makes up a calendar month. There are at least 28 days in each calendar month and 4 weeks within a calendar month. We know, of course, that there are more in specific months to make up the 365 days. We'll continue with the rest the following school day.